You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Ooh. Oh, we are so back. What's going on? The season 2 premiere of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill, and I love in the chat, just reading it right now. Ready to have our hearts broken again. What's going on, Rosie? How are you, buddy?
Somebody said that already. Hey, ouch, ouch, ouch. We'll see. We will see. I'm happy to be back at her, though, buddy.
How you been? Long off season or what?
Yeah, it seems like it. It sure does. I mean, we're picking away, doing things here and there in the background, but it's nice to get regular schedule down again and get rocking and rolling. Summer's definitely over, so I think people are ready for hockey.
We're coming back bigger and better than ever, of course, here in season number 2, presented by Betano. We're going 45 minutes long this year, which means one thing and one thing only. Longer Jay Rosehill rants. You made a name for yourself last year. It was your rookie campaign as a broadcaster.
Yeah, sometimes if you feel passionate about something, you just got to let her go, don't you?
Yeah, you got to let her fly sometimes. At the Leafs Nation 401. So again, first and foremost, a big portion of this show is being interactive and conversing with you on YouTube. So don't be afraid to ever chime in. We'll pick up where you left off. We'll have that conversation as we move on in the show at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe here on YouTube. Again, available wherever you find your podcast. Just search Leafs Morning Take. Will pop up. We got some new graphics this season. We're cooking. We are absolutely cooking. And it was a long off season of discussions and conversations to go to 45 minutes. But I love that, Rosie.
Yeah, it'll be good. Gets the freedom to, go off and explore some stuff, go off topic a little bit, dig into some stuff, do a deep dive, whatever it takes. It's going to happen here this year, man.
Corey writes in, good morning, guys, from Medicine Hat. What's going on, Corey? Sick new intro, writes Mr. P-Mail Bacon, one of my favorites. I'm just so pumped to do this once again with you, Rosie. But off the top, there was something that happened this weekend where I'm like, I got to get in here in the season premiere on Monday and break it down and dissect it with Jay Rosehill, a former professional athlete for the Philadelphia Flyers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Did you catch that celebration this weekend for the Toronto Blue Jays? And if you did, this is coming off back-to-back losses where they were thrown around a bit by the Tampa Bay Rays. They got into the postseason, then they partied like crazy. What did you make of that?
I always find it weird with baseball, man, the way they go off for every single round. And then to see that, I mean, I'm not going to knock it and hate it because, I mean, what's wrong with partying? Let's have some fun. But
True.
It seems weird, man, to squeak into the playoffs and just eke through a mediocre season and then just dancing and popping bottles and champagne showers. It's a bit over the top. And I think almost everybody that looks at it thinks it's kind of funny. That's all anyone says is, how are they partying that hard and celebrating that much for basic mediocrity is what it comes down to.
It's one thing for me to like celebrate on Saturday night, even after you lose that game, but Seattle loses. Go out with the team, have a good time on King West. I get that. But the thing that ticked me off is like, you lose back-to-back games. You sort of backed your way into the postseason. I get it. It's really, really hard to make the postseason. But if it's under the old rules, the Jays don't make it. They had 3 fewer losses, or 3 more losses, I should say, so, from last season. It was a different story, like a very, very frustrating season. And who knows if it was the players who were like, let's do this, or maybe it was the corporation and Rogers. But I just thought it was poor taste considering where this franchise has been the last couple of years. Like, look at this. Imagine the Leafs did this after clinching a playoff spot. Like, look at this celebration again after back-to-back losses, and it's delayed. Like they knew Saturday night they were in.
I know, and that's the thing, right? I imagine the Leafs did this. Like, imagine they just snuck into the wild card spot and partied like that. Like, they'd be crucified, right? I mean, I'd like, does everybody do it? Like, going back through the years, does everyone party like that to sneak into the playoffs the way they're doing it, or was that a little more over the top?
Okay, put it this way. So at the beginning, when this started becoming a thing, I would remember thoroughly, like being a baseball fan my entire life now at 34, like the celebrations started being broadcasted maybe like, I want to say 7-8 years ago, where it's like, let's go to the room after they clinch a playoff spot or win a series. And at the beginning, I remember the Jays, when they started being successful, making the postseason back in 14, 15, like that era of Blue Jays baseball. They didn't have the ski goggles set up. And then somebody introduced that. Whereas I noticed yesterday, New Era, who is like a big baseball company, had their own goggles to the entire team, like every player on the team. So like it just shows you the span of how long this has grown. And now it's become ridiculous. Like every time you win a playoff game, you're celebrating. So pretty much what would happen, whoever wins this, this Blue Jays Minnesota Twins series would celebrate again and again. That's like winning the Stanley Cup like 5 different times. I think the whole point of a season is to get to that summit, that pinnacle to celebrate. No?
Yeah, it's just a different vibe, man. Baseball is just that way. I mean, it's more chill, it's less raw. You're not screaming and yelling at the guys. I always thought like football's the worst for like hustle your ass up, get over here. It's just so intense. You only get like 17 games a year and everything's just hyper important at every time, at every second. They have to be like so on top of the guys. Then hockey's a little bit less that way, but certainly more so than baseball. And at the end of the line is baseball, where it's just you're playing every single day, hundreds of games. It's just a little bit more chill. And I guess they just don't take themselves quite that serious, I guess. I don't know. But it seems like the Jays are not the only ones to do it. Certainly seems over the top to celebrate that hard for not winning anything. You just eke into the playoffs and it's popping bottles.
It's ridiculous. And by the way, the offseason's over because your boy Donnie Dazish is the biggest troll of all time for Leafs Morning Take Back in the chat. He said, didn't the Leafs have a parade after the first round? ?
I don't think they did, but they are pretty famous for building statues and then tearing them right down.
I got to be honest, man. The Leafs beat Tampa. I was out on King Street West, and there was a bit of a celebration, not just for me, but other people, other Leafs fans. Like it was busier than normal for the Leafs winning a playoff series. So we're guilty.
Well, rightfully so. I mean, they haven't been there in 19 years. It was a big win against kind of their rivals as of late and the back-to-back champs, and they knocked them off. So I get it. I like to recognize when you actually win something, but just keep it in perspective there, Blue Jays. They seem to struggle with that.
Yeah. So let's see a celebration like a month when you win the World Series. Nonetheless, would you be that guy? Let's say you were on the Leafs way back when, a decade ago, and you won a playoff series. Would you be that guy, no tarp? Because there's a couple guys who are celebrating no jerseys. I think you would be that guy for sure.
I think I'm a little too bashful for that. I never saw it, but seems weird. Cameras all over the place. There's women as reporters that are coming in there, and guys are half naked and stuff. I don't know. Throw some clothes on doesn't hurt you, but whatever. If you got your jersey and it's soaked in champagne, I guess you got to peel her off.
I guess so. And I was shocked Dalton Varsho, who seems like the most timid player on the field, was jers off with the family, but good on him. It's been a grinding year for him. I won't lie, Rose, pretty optimistic following a successful weekend for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, I was probably the only one watching a back-to-back for the Leafs where they brought their D roster to Montreal, but I hope those guys sent it nonetheless. Like Montreal's got some of the best nightlife, not only in Canada, but in the world, in my opinion. I know that, being somebody who is from Montreal, lived there for 5 years. I've partied there a billion times. So I hope they sent it at the very beginning. But like, I was really impressed. And I think it's more so with, the plan of this team and where they're headed and the future. Like we'll touch on the kids. I don't know if you saw this as well, but they're playing Montreal tonight for the 3rd straight game. And it's pretty much the Leafs roster going. The only names I didn't notice, Yarncroke, Giordano, but they're rolling like a full roster. Like this is probably the first look at this Maple Leafs team we're going to get this season tonight.
Yeah, and that's exciting. It seems like the further you go into the preseason, the more you start to round off with your big boys. I mean, you're not going to play 7 games for, your top guys or your older guys or the high minute guys, and you want to kind of get a look at everybody. But as it starts to come down to the last few, you start to see the season share, the roster shape up for the season. You can take a look at what it's going to look like. This is the first time I think it's going to really look like the actual Maple Leafs. And it's an exciting time of year because personally, I don't really like preseason. I don't really like exhibition games. They don't mean anything. And once they start winding down and you start to see that roster and what it's going to actually look like, and they're on the ice, it becomes, we know we're getting close to that regular season, and we'll see what they can put together. But lots of positives they've come out of the preseason, the bit that I've watched. Guys have been stepping up. Guys have been, making the choices difficult for the brass upstairs. So that's all you can ask this time of year.
Tell you what, another big night for Nick Robertson coming. Like this guy has 83 opportunities, scoring chances throughout the early preseason. He finally scored on Saturday, and it was a beauty, like a semi breakaway. But like, it's put up or shut up time, at least this year, to crack this roster at a camp for Nick Robertson. And again, a lot of this could be contingent on what happens with Calle Yarncroke, who's banged up, hasn't played a preseason game. But like Robertson's in the lineup, Noah Gregor, who's on a PTO, is in the lineup. Like I still think Gregor has the inside track, and it might be a null of a conversation anyways if Yarncroke can't go for the season opener. But that's one guy specifically I'm watching on this Leafs roster once again tonight is Nicky Robertson.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of those guys, right? He's there. He's close. He's going to have to earn it. I mean, you start to run out of roster spots on the line. You get him filled up enough. And I think his saving grace right now, something that certainly doesn't hurt, is having Yarncroke hurt, because that could be that final straw that either, pushes him out or not. And, Noah Gregor's in the same boat. He's actually looking for a contract. He doesn't have a job yet. And, he's looked sharp too as well. And I think it's going to come down to what type of player do they need for that roster spot. I don't think they're the exact same player by any stretch. I think Nick Robertson's, he's got more skill. He's more of an offensive player. It's going to be tough. What are we going to pick? Which style of player do you want to go with? And whether that's Noah Gregor or not, it's going to be hard to see. But this is a big game here. Like we said, we got most of the lineup ready to rock, and it'll be kind of last couple of kicks at the can here to prove that you're worth a roster spot. And I think that last one's going to be a tough one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. And I just want to see a bit of something. I think the thing I've noticed with Robertson early on is like he's just trying to do too much. And when he has the puck, just shoot it. Like if you're a scorer and you're not scoring, then I just don't know the worth to this organization and this roster, at least right now. Whereas like a Gregor, I think is way more versatile. But I tell you something, like Noah Gregor, he's been really, really impressive to me, the way he's conducted himself, come into camp, really earned his spot. Again, who knows what's going to happen here, but I think at the very least, he's earned a contract. If it's not with the Maple Leafs, it's somewhere else. Like I've noticed him every preseason game. And again, we've been talking about this a lot in sort of our quickie podcast the last little while, how they need a guy with some jam, some speed down the lineup. And I think this guy's way more versatile, no?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like he's a kind of a player where, you're going to be on the PK, you're going to be in that energy line, you're going to, do a little bit extra, be defensively sound. Like, is it a good thing to put, Robertson on that, maybe fourth line role, and he's not really that player? You're not really setting him up for success. I think if he's going to be on the Maple Leafs, he kind of needs to be, it's not quite in the top six, but on the third line, you just can't fill a player like him on the fourth line and say, okay, go be our utility guy, go be our energy guy, go be our fourth line checking line. He's not built for that. And if they go that direction and that's where he's slated to go, I think the edge has got to go to Noah Gregor, because he's more that player. He's proven that he's had a good preseason. He can be used in different situations, and he's more suited for that fourth line role than Nick Robertson. And you want to talk about a scorer that's not really finding ways to score. A good way to make sure you do that is to put him in a situation he's not really made for, and to put him on that fourth line, and then he's not scoring at all. He's not surrounded by players that can facilitate his skill set, and all of a sudden you've just got the wrong combo going. And I think he might fall victim to that this year. We'll see. Again, Yarncroke being hurt doesn't hurt him at all, but it just seems like for what you're looking out of that fourth line and what this team's been lacking, that energy, that energy type of checking type of player, I think that's more Gregor than it is Robertson.
Yeah, I agree with that, with all you just said. And like, I think regardless of what happens, specifically with Robertson, he needs to play games. Like health is so important. I think confidence is huge. He's only played 82 pro games, a handful in the NFL, a handful in the American Hockey League. And I don't want to say it's hindered or like stunted his growth as a player, but I think at the very least, he needs to go down there, dominate, be consistent, play consistently. Like there's a lot of factors, but I don't think this kid's lost by any stretch. Like I understand this is a pivotal time in his career, but he's still relatively young. And it seems like every year we have this conversation on Nick Robertson, but that's what I want to see. I want to see him go down and dominate and play, period.
Yeah. And I mean, with missing that much time to injury, it doesn't help anyone. I mean, there are prospects a dime a dozen who had, high hopes from the organization and ran into some injuries, and their entry-level contract didn't really go as planned, and they just get kind of lost in the ether. I'm not saying that's happening to Nick Robertson, but when you do miss a lot of time and you are prone to injury and you're supposed to have these huge jumps in development years and you're just not getting them, like to say he's only played one season of hockey professionally, 82 games, that's just not enough, right? And is that anyone's fault? No. Does that mean he's not going to be in the organization? No, it doesn't. But it's certainly not helpful, and it's hard. And he needs to have a big year, whether that's with the big club or down with the Marlies or split between the two. Like you said, he needs to get that confidence back. He needs to find a way to prove and force the Maple Leafs to insert this player into the lineup in a role that he's going to flourish in. And right now, with how deep they are on the forward side, I think it's difficult for him right now. And he may end up going down to the Marlies. And if that is the case, he's going to need to really focus on his development, confidence, get tons of reps, and just get himself as NHL ready as possible for when that time does come, if it does come.
Do you think there has to be a specific plan with the big boys? Like, that's the one noticeable thing I think in camp, and it's not early anymore by any stretch, but most of them have played just one game. We've barely seen them out there. Does there need to be a specific plan, or do you think it varies from player to player?
I think it's more about, they know who they are. They know what they can do. They know their value. It's not really about, we're going to do something special with Mitch Marner this year. It's just about getting them all on the same page, getting that identity that you need as a team early. And by getting that, you do it by gelling and having chemistry. And I think this is a good time for it. Sheldon Keefe is not scared to dick around with the lineup and mess around with different formulas to try to find that. I hope they find it early. I hope they find, lineups that work and are sustainable and are solid and don't change. I don't mind mixing up the lines and changing things around to try to find it, but it seemed like you do that all year long and you never really do find it. So are you just dicking with it for the sake of messing with the lineup? Like, try to find something that works. Try to find something that these guys can take time to really sink their teeth into and gel with. You got to have a lineup that's ready to rock. Obviously, we're super early for that, but I don't want to be going into the playoffs still messing around with, what's the lineup's going to be this year? Who's so-and-so playing with it? You got to have some consistency for these guys.
I just don't know, like this whole Nylander thing has caught me off guard. Like, it's funny. We come into camp and we're like, the big conversation is going to be the contract. Here we are, like 2 weeks in, we've barely talked about the contract, and it's been more about Willie Nylander randomly, trying to transfer to center and change to center. And in the long run, I just don't know how it's going to work out. And I guess you're slotting in John Tavares as your 3C, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3 up the middle with Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares. I don't know if you sit differently in this conversation, but like, that's the most intriguing storyline for me outside the obvious when it comes to the contract, is like Nylander and how he slots into the roster, because it's quite clear the depth they're trying to build, at least within the top 9, right?
Yeah, and they got lots of weapons to do it, and I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting. There's a little bit more responsibility as a centerman, especially in the D zone. That'll be something that's new, and he's not exactly known to be the most hyper defensively aware player in the world. That'll be something that'll be different for him. But I just think that these guys are so bloody skilled. He's such a good hockey player. He has such a lot of hockey sense to understand. I don't think a player of his caliber is going to struggle with it, making that adjustment. You're going to have to watch a little video. You're going to have to be reminded of some defensive responsibilities in your own zone, where you got to be helping out those defensemen, and you can't just hang out on that half wall or in the middle and have your guy. And that's kind of hunky-dory for a winger, but there's a little bit more going on with that centerman. I think he can handle it. I don't mind it if it lasts forever. It's tough to say. Like I said, Keefe doesn't mind messing around with the lines. This could be a thing of the past here within weeks. And you remember when they tried him at center? I don't know if it's going to stick or not, but I don't mind trying it. He's a high enough caliber of player that he can make the adjustments necessary. And if it works, great. If not, nothing lost really at this point in the year.
I'll put you on the spot. December 1st, is Willie Nylander still a center?
December 1? No, he's not. I don't think it's going to last.
I agree. I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't feel as strongly as others on Sam Lafferty. And I know it's a third line, but JT Lafferty and Matthew Nyes, again, we really haven't seen that line together. Like, tonight's going to be the first look when Toronto hosts the Montreal Canadiens, and we'll see how the chemistry cooks. But the Nylander thing, I just don't see long-term. I think he's a fit in the top 6 as a winger. You know what's really impressed me, Rosie, so far in the preseason? And again, I'm trying to find storylines and conversations to be had, but it's the kids, man. Like, we had this conversation a couple weeks back where it was like Toronto's prospect capital just wasn't there compared to other teams in the league. But there's 3 kids that have really, really been impressive. And it starts with Nyes, like Matthew Nyes, man. Like the more and more I watch this guy, it doesn't seem like the game's too big for him. Like he comes in the postseason last year, he was incredible. Prospects tournament, he was pretty good. Training camp, he's been excellent. And I know these are games against D rosters in Montreal over the weekend, but to play a back-to-back in La Belle Pro, I hope Nyes sent it a bit downtown too. Like the more I watch him, I'm like, this guy could be a legitimate like superstar. I know it's a strong word, but he just brings a lot to the table for this team.
Dude, he is the player that I'm the most excited about being on this roster this year. He's the guy I want to watch most. If I were to go get a jersey right now, it would be a Nyes jersey, no question. He's like my guy right now. And I've been saying that since we interviewed him when he's still in college last year. Twice. 2 interviews, both times. just his personality, his confidence, his maturity was through the roof. He's got his head on his shoulders. He's a high quality player. He's got the confidence to get it done in that league. And I like the way that he has stepped up, and it's almost like he understands that, and he's taken like a leadership role, it seems like, during the prospect tournament for sure. And then throughout these preseason games, when you watch him, he just seems like, he knows that he's like one of the best players on the ice. I mean, he's still a rookie, and it's still exhibition. They don't have their big boys in there. I get it. But because they're not there, he has not just been, under the radar. He stepped up and said, all right, I'm the big boy now. And he just has this confidence that I love. I think he's a very solid player. I love the way he gets down low. He's unreal off the walls, unreal in the corners. He can score. He can make plays. And I think that he's going to have a big year, and a lot of people are going to know who he is by the end of this season. And I just love how he's a Toronto Maple Leaf.
The biggest difference I've noticed in a small period of time from when we saw him last year gets a concussion, his season's done, to the preseason here is like his stick lifting and the way he plays without the puck. And it reminds me of another guy he skated with, Austin Matthews, man. Like he just has like the deceiving size and like the speed and the skill to go with that. And I think that's a pretty impressive combo to have in this day and age of modern day NHL hockey. And I'm right there with you. Like, I'm so excited to see what he can bring to the table in an 82-game slate. Health is going to be a big topic with every player in the NHL, clearly. But I just think the fascination is there more so because what he did in the springtime, but he's carried that over. And again, it's just the preseason, but I think he's like a perfect fit to what they're looking to build on this roster and the future, no?
Yeah, and he doesn't seem like a guy where the moment's getting too big for him. Like, I don't know, you compare him to Nick Robertson and you think, who's feeling the pressure a little bit more, who's going to crumble, who's going to step up. And Robertson's had trouble taking that step and saying, boom, I'm here, I'm a no-doubter. He's really just not been able to do that yet. And Nyes, from minute one, he's been put in difficult positions. There was a lot of talk about him last year. He gets thrown right into the Stanley Cup playoffs and just brings his game every time, stands out every time, does not seem to feel like the moment's too big for him or anything like that. And if he can continue doing that down the stretch in big moments and big games and big plays, I feel like he can just be a huge asset to this roster. I don't want to build him up too much and say this or that, but I mean, you use the word superstar, and there is potential for that with this player. Like you said, down low, those big wide legs, he's like a power forward who can absolutely put the puck in the net, make plays, get the job done that way. It's just like a wicked blend of exactly what this team needs. And I think he rounds out that forward list really well. And I don't think he's going to have any trouble finding people to play with. Like, does he get cracks with some of the big boys? I don't even think it matters to him. I think he's what drives a line a lot of the times with the way he handles himself out there. And I just think he can fit anywhere. And again, don't want to pump him up too much, but fuck, man, I'm just really impressed with him. And I think he's got an insanely bright future, barring, knock on wood, like you said, any injuries.
I just want to take advantage of his early days, right, where he's not making too much, especially in the salary cap world. And again, we expect the cap to go up big time next summer. And, Matthews has a new contract, trying to re-sign Nylander. Marner's going to have that conversation. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces to this roster. And I think any good team in the NHL, you need some of your rooks to take that step earlier than anticipated to extract the most value cap-wise, right? And I think Matthew Nyes is a prime example of that with the Leafs. Some other younger guys that really, really stepped up so far here in the preseason that I've really, really noticed, like Easton Cowan, right? We had this conversation around the draft in Nashville. A lot of people felt in the scouting community, maybe the Leafs jumped a tad early on Easton Cowan. Dude, this guy's been one of their better players. For a guy who many said shouldn't have gone in the first round, he's been noticeable every game. He's done something different. He's produced, and at the very least, he set himself up nicely for a really, really strong year in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah, big time. I mean, it doesn't seem like long ago, people are bitching and complaining about like we have no prospects, we have no one coming down the pipeline. And then you look around at, some of these guys like Cowan and Nyes for sure. And if Robertson, all of a sudden it's looking not too bad, And I mean, the draft is the draft. You just don't know what these kids. Some of these kids are 17 years old, and you're picking them based on, a lot of secondhand things from scouting, and you try to do as much research as you can, but you don't know who's going to pan out and who's not. And, sometimes guys are really high picks and they're complete busts. Sometimes people think, oh, why'd they take that player? And they become like, a franchise type player with that organization. And it's too early to say any of that kind of thing. But when you pick a guy, regardless of what people say, when he comes up and he shows quality hockey at opportune times, like just getting drafted and being in Toronto and being in the camp and playing in exhibition games and standing out as a guy, it's just positive signs, right? It's a good hope for him down the road. And like you said, go and have a quality hockey season this year in the Ontario Hockey League. And who knows when he's going to be ready, but it's just nice to see that people are coming down the pipeline and we've got some potential good players down the depth chart.
Just looking here on YouTube at the Leafs Nation 401 once again, where you can chime in via the chat. Kale writes in, are the lines they showed here official for tonight? As far as we know, and that's Mark Masters tweeting out the lines from TSN. That's what we're looking at for this game tonight. Pretty much the official roster. Many thanks to producer Aaron for putting that back on the screen for you guys to have a look at. Our apologies if you're just listening in podcast form. But to me, it just seems like, Yarncroke's not in. Giordano's not in. Like pretty much the roster we're going to see on opening night if you expect Noah Gregor to crack this team. So like, it's exciting from that standpoint, certainly. Fraser Minton's another guy. I know some of the prospects guys over at the LeafsNation.com have been doing some great work, and Fraser Minton's a guy that's been talked about quite a bit. That Minton-Nyes combo, like it really excites me for the future. Like you're seeing a goal right now on your screen right now. It just excites me for the future knowing that next wave is coming. And I love internal competition, dude. We talked about this last year. I love when guys push other guys along. I just think it's healthy.
It is, man. And I mean, if that's what you need to get going, I like internal chemistry, man. When guys are just clicking and finding each other, and every time you look, it's like, oh, that was them again. And to find that is just huge. And teams that win the Stanley Cup, they have that in spades. It's not easy to find, and you can't really force it. And if you don't have it, there's not a whole lot you can do. You just got to kind of hope for it. Guys are clicking, and you can't even explain why, but they just are. And to see that out there with prospects, with highline guys, with down the roster a little bit, guys, doesn't matter who it is. When guys are clicking, it's nice to see. This is the time of year you want to do that. And I mean, the competition to me is going to make it difficult on the brass on who you're taking and who you're letting go, because when everyone's kind of clicking and people are looking good, it makes the decision difficult, and you're going to have to put a guy down that maybe doesn't really deserve it, but you're just going to run out of spots. And that's all you can hope when you're a fan of a team, is that there's lots of guys giving her hell out there and wanting to make that squad and make it tough on the brass, make it difficult, have multiple people that are worthy of wearing that jersey this year. And that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, don't forget about waivers too. Like that plays a bit of an impact, right? I think it's some other guys on the roster. Duke writes in, the young guys need to hop in the gym looking younger and smaller by the year. Is something in the water? Jay, I'll let you handle that.
I don't know, man. These kids these days, all they do is live in the gym and eat, breathe, and sleep hockey. So I don't know. The league's getting younger. I mean, when you look at go to the 90s or something, when you look at a bench, it just looked like grizzly styled men, and now you look and there's just so many little red rosy cheeks and baby faces, and I don't know what that means. I don't think anyone is going to get to that level this day and age without being in the gym, without being fit and strong. Those guys do all the training BS in the summer, and I can't think that anyone on that team is a little scrawn who's not in shape. But yeah, I understand where he's coming from. It looks like boys out there a lot of the time compared to some of the old men that used to play this game. I don't know what that is. I guess it's just a high skill, high octane game that a lot of these kids are stepping into.
Man, there was that infamous off-season video. I think it was Regina Pat's training camp, where there was legit a kid in camp who was 14 who
Yep.
he looked like he was like 8 years old, but he was a hockey player. I think he made the team, honestly.
Yeah, I remember that. I think he's a studly little D-man, isn't he? I don't know. The kids are getting younger. The game's getting younger. I mean, it's less about being a brute and, there's not a lot of clutching and grabbing and a hold. There's not a lot of scrapping and hitting and fighting. And you don't have to be that 6'4", 230 guy anymore to compete in the league. And I think with that comes a lot of high skill. A lot of high skill players these days are getting younger and younger. They're, look at some of the Michigan and the way these guys are doing things with these new sticks and lots of different fancy stuff. Like 40-year-old men aren't really doing that. It's the young kids doing all that stuff. And as a byproduct of that, the league's getting younger and younger. And yeah, sometimes maybe I'm just getting older, but I look at the bench and go, holy smokes, this is the show. These kids look like babies right now. But what are you going to do?
Dude, it's pretty crazy. Like I'm just 34. You're around that age too. Like I find myself telling those like back in my day stories, man. It's scary. We're getting there, eh? Like it's like our parents, like my parents always say, like back in my day, I'd go to school in a snowstorm walking backwards, like that story. But now I'm telling people early on in the industry who I bump into, like 23, 24, like back in my day of broadcasting, like I'm telling those stories and it scares me. But you're right.
Yeah, and I don't want to become that crotchety old man where everything's bad and everything's bullshit and well, this is how we did it. Every generation thinks that, they're smarter than the one coming up and they don't understand the younger generation. That's all fine and dandy, but this is what it is. I don't want to bitch too much about the way hockey's played these days, about what the Maple Leafs look like. There's stuff I could get into a little bit that bothers me about the game right now, but at the end of the day, you got to keep things in perspective. The league's never going to be the same as it was. Things are always changing, and you got to keep up with the times, or you're probably going to end up being a crotchety old bastard. Like maybe I'm headed there.
Yeah, potentially. It's Krusty Donnie. He revealed his age in the chat, by the way. He's 51. I thought Donnie was going to be like some 16-year-old troll in his mother's basement. I guess I'm wrong.
51 Donnie. Nah, I pegged him about that.
Yeah, you knew, eh? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating question from Mario Kart. Great handle, by the way. He says Jones greater than Wall. And I don't know, man. This drives me nuts. I know Martin Jones has been pretty decent in camp. Like we've had this conversation too throughout the offseason. They signed Martin Jones for insurance purposes, thinking, hey, if he can get to the AHL, he can be a good third string guy for us. But people are going nuts over this conversation to be had in the next week that presumably we'll have Martin Jones going on waivers. You would think somebody's going to pick him up. It makes a lot of sense that he does not get through waivers. And people suggesting it should be Joseph Woll that go on waivers, I think is ludicrous to me. Martin Jones is like an 896 save percentage every season. Like he's a borderline NHL goalie at this point in his career. Let's pump the brakes a bit, Rosie.
Yeah, I never really saw that to be part of the conversation. I mean, Woll is he's like our up and comer. He's our guy that, he bailed us out a bit last year. He's another guy that looks poised and confident and can just not let the moment be too big for him. I think he can handle this market and what it takes to be in that position on this team. I think he's an up and comer. I don't think you're going to take him and put him a big step back. I think that would be a big story if you put him in the minors. I think it's, Sammy and him. It's the 1-2. We've been talking about that all summer. I don't think there's any worry of that happening. I put Jones on waivers. How often do guys get picked up, man? I'm sure some guys would like to have them, but I mean, if you do it strategically, when you put them on waivers, when everyone's trying to like thin out their roster and finalize some things, even if a team would want him or could use him, it doesn't mean they're going to pick him up on waivers. You got to make space for that. There's cap implications. You got a certain amount of roster spots, blah, blah, blah. I think you could sneak him through on waivers and get him down to the Marlies. And there you go. There's your emergency guy in case anything happens up here with the Leafs.
It feels like every Leaf that goes on waivers who's like a substantial name gets claimed. That's why I say that. And I think you look at Tampa specifically, Vasilevsky goes down. It sounds like a perfect marriage. And hopefully, fingers crossed, when Jones does go on waivers, he gets through so they can provide a bit of insurance. Because the one thing we've realized with this team, I think it was like 11 or 12 different goalies since 2017 that the Leafs have utilized, including a Zamboni driver. I was there for that game against Carolina. It still hurts. A lot of age conversation in the chat right now. Everybody revealing their age. Love the fan support. Now we're talking astrology. Donnie says, I'm Aquarius. Somebody called him a Capricorn. He got offended.
Jesus, Donnie, they're breaking it down hard in the chat there.
It's the first show of the season. People are going off the rails already.
I like it. I like it. Well, people are excited. We're ready to rock here.
We are. The other conversation I wanted to have regarding injuries, right? And this happens all the time. You played in this league. Guys get dinged up. Yarncroaks get to play a game. Connor Timmins, man, like was having such a good training camp. The 4-point outing in Kraft Hockeyville. And now it sounds like he's going to miss some time. And I can't stand this with this day and age. They don't tell you anything. This dates back to that. I think Pat Quinn actually was the initiator of all this, like lower body, upper body BS. But he's going to miss some time as Timmins, LBI. John Klingberg has an upper body injury day-to-day. We think this is where the injury took place in Montreal, one of the 18 games they played Montreal here in the preseason. It's so unfortunate because Timmins was on track to potentially have a fighting chance of being that sixth guy, right? It's going to be Liljegren, but like Timmins was having a good preseason here.
I know, and it just sucks when injuries happen. I mean, you make plans and you have projections for what's going to happen, and you know there's enough going on, and then it just blows the doors right off of your whole plans when guys go down and get hurt. I think Klingberg's hurt right now too. I mean, this is a guy that we've talked about trying to get his feet under him, get back to his old ways that he's, 3-4 years ago is when he's having big seasons, putting up big numbers. We want his confidence to go high. We want him to develop and feel comfortable. Bang, he gets hurt. And now, you take a step back, but it's part of the game. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no way to predict it and there's no way to prevent it. You just got to roll with the punches. But, the only thing I can say is having enough depth to support the lineup still when guys do go down, because it's going to happen to every team every single year. You're going to have some form of injury, and you need to have guys to fill in, and you need to find ways to keep chipping through the points and getting points on the board when you don't have your full roster, and it's just inevitable. It's going to happen. So there's nothing you can do about it, but it is frustrating, no doubt, when you have guys like this, like Timmins, who's trying to crack this lineup, Klingberg, he's trying to regain some form. Yeah. And injuries happen. Then it's like, well, fuck, now we just got to wait and see what happens. Then when he comes back, he's going to be a little rusty. Is his confidence hurt? Is the injury still bugging him? It's just brutal all over. But all you can do is hope that it's not major injuries and it's just kind of nursing things. I know at the beginning of the season, guys' bodies aren't used to banging and crashing. There's always guys that go down in the preseason, but hopefully it's, more maintenance stuff than anything and just trying to heal up day-to-day injuries and not anything serious. But again, they don't tell us. So how are you supposed to know?
Yeah, we'll never know. But that's the crap thing about Klingberg is he's supposed to run the first power play unit, but he's barely got a chance to rip it with these guys, right? And we're running out of racetrack here in the preseason. And I get it's a Maple Leafs power play. It's been one of the top power plays in the league for X amount of years, but I would like to get him some reps. I know John Klingberg has ran a power play once or twice in his career, but this is a different animal here in Toronto, especially the scrutiny that comes with the position and being a Toronto Maple Leaf, especially on the blue line, especially in that position, especially knowing who's behind him in a Morgan Riley. And confidence is so big with John Klingberg. And I think this is the worst start imaginable to get hurt this quickly and not really get your feet under you.
Yeah, I know. And, like you said, they haven't had a lot of reps. They play a ton of games, but not everyone's playing in it. And with a PP unit and being the quarterback of it and having guys out there like Austin Matthews and Marner and the top four, really, I mean, those guys are guys that you want to get clicking with. It would be easy to get your confidence going when, you're feeding those guys and everyone's putting up points. Everyone's feeling happy on that peeper. If you don't even really get a look at it, that's difficult. And then it's difficult to not play and then come off an injury and then you get thrown right in there and you haven't been able to practice with these guys. You don't know what their tendencies are out there. It just makes it a little bit more difficult. But again, you're a professional. This is what's part of the game and you got to find a way to overcome it because no one's going to be, feeling sorry for you if it doesn't work out. You got to get it done and figure out a way to do it. So John Klingberg, it's up to him to, first heal up and then get out there and get things done, do what he's paid for and shine out there. And hopefully that's exactly what happens. But again, we won't know what the severity of the injury probably anytime soon, I would guess, unless there's some kind of a release, but they sure like to keep it under their hats.
They do. J-Dub writes in, when is Rosie coming out with his own beer? Is that a possibility, Rosie?
Oh, I don't know if we're at that point yet. We'll see, man. Some guy used to make beer in Philly and he'd put a label on it. So he made me I think it was just a lager, but it has this fighting picture and it said Broad Street Bully Ale or something like that. And it was kind of cool, but we'll see. I don't know what goes into that. It sounds a little bit crazy to go and get into that already.
Dr. Firewater, Rosie Nation, Blueberry Radler. That sounds like you. J-Dub, I like this name. Core 4 Pale Ale. That's your favorite topic point, right? Talking about the Core 4.
Pale Ale. Well, I don't want to start putting that in the works, and then we'll see what happens with this Core 4. Might be the Core 3 plus something else we picked up. We'll see, man. Time will tell.
Ooh, I think it could be a Core 5 with Matthew Nyes involved in that conversation. But nonetheless, Rosie, the Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Speaking of which, coming up on Saturday, October 7th, Rosie, in a couple days from now, our friends over at Betano will be hosting a live hockey trivia show filled with tons of great prizes and giveaways. More info on that coming up throughout the week. Are you good with like hockey trivia? It reminds me a lot of like, so I went to Fanshawe College in London back in the day. I've told you this before. Great party city. I was actually there when John Tavares was on the Knights, when Kadri was on the Knights, John Carlson. Like, they had a sick team. And I remember the first year of broadcast school, there was like a digital, and this is so ironic, there was a digital hockey show that the first years put together, and we had to try out for it. Like the second years tried us out. And hockey trivia was how you got on this show. I didn't get on the show because my hockey trivia stinks. And well, look how my career worked out. But were you good? Are you good at hockey trivia?
Probably pretty average, man. If you're trying to do stats and numbers, I'm not a big crunch the stats guy, so I wouldn't get that kind of thing. I'm good at like trivia in itself, like, I don't know, pop culture stuff or something, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you're strictly hockey and you're going back a ways, lots of times I got it on the tip of my tongue and I just can't say it, that kind of thing. So I think I'd be pretty average at it, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Like my expertise, believe it or not, is like what way does a player shoot, or like what number they wear, what teams they played for, as opposed to like who scored 40 goals how many times in their career. I've never been like the hockey historian. I have so much respect for people who reminisce and recall and remember all that stuff. It's crazy to me.
Some guys are weird, man. Like you're talking about, someone that you played against back in junior, and I have tons of friends that are like, you know him. He was number 26 and he's a right-handed shot. And I'm like, what the fuck? You're
I'm
talking
that
about
guy.
20 years ago and like what way they shoot. Some guys are really hard on that where they just never forget a guy they can just picture. I am not that guy. I'm trying to remember like what way my best buddy shoots because they get them kind of mixed up. So I'm definitely not that guy, but I don't know, a little hockey trivia. Maybe we should try it on here sometime.
Yeah, we could try for sure. And don't forget, again, Betano, live hockey trivia coming up on Saturday. So stay tuned for details on that, for great prizes and giveaways. Rosie, let's get to our first Betano play of the year. You're on the clock, and we're looking at Monday Night Football, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got Seattle. Or no, who the heck do we got? Yeah, Seattle. They got to travel over to New York.
Rosie.
Just what did I write down here? Yeah, they're favored right now, considering they're on the road. That's kind of rare. But they got to go over to New York, play them. They're only favored by 1.5 points. I think their offense is just better. I think the Giants, by the looks of things, has a little bit more of a struggling defense. So I think they're going to smack them and they can win by, a field goal at least, maybe more. But, they got 1.5 points they got to cover. And I think they do it tonight. So I'm taking Seattle.
All right, so and if you're just new to this show, we'll have a play for you every show during the year, and pretty simple. If Rosie gets it right, he continues on. If he doesn't, it's back to me, and we'll go back and forth. And we were pretty successful. I think we won people some money last year.
Yeah, I don't think we were too bad. They were when we started the year off. I think we were both pretty cold. Were we hot or cold? I remember some streaks that were not good, but I cleaned it up for sure. The football stuff, it's tough, man. I mean, gambling on sports has gotten so big in the last couple of years. It's absolutely nuts. And, Vegas does not sleep. It doesn't take a day off. They've got their lines and it's hard to sneak one by them. But if you got a good feeling about something, it never hurts to throw a couple bucks down and make the game a little bit more interesting. So hopefully we can do that and make the folks at home a couple extra bucks.
Mario Kart writes in, ask Rosie if he remembers how many PIMs he had in the 14-15 season with the Phantoms. I would say 2 billion. Does that sound about right?
I don't know what I had. I think 275 was the most I've had in a season the year I was fighting like a maniac for some reason, but I don't know. Two something. I don't know. It got up there. I don't think the PIMs, when you look at guys, I always laugh because they're talking about some player and they're like, oh, he's a hard-nosed player, blah, blah. And you go look him up on DB and he has like 42 PIMs that year. It's like, how hard-nosed could he be? Like, you got to get into it a little bit, but again, the game's changed. You don't play it that way anymore. And, that's fine with me. It is what it is. But yeah, I used to put up a few PIMs back in the day. Sometimes I wasn't the proudest of my antics out there when you're really losing it. But hey, that's hockey, baby.
I went through a rabbit hole on YouTube last week, and you did something in England, I think it was. We're gonna get to that at some point in time on this
Mm,
show.
the
You
reffing
lost.
over there was something else. It was like a different planet, man. I got so frustrated. Yeah, that's kind of the stuff I'm talking about when I say there's a few times there I might have needed to take a breath, but
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. We have a long season number 2, at least want to take. Before we wrap, some injury notes and news from practice, I guess, the morning skates. So first and foremost, and this is from Sheldon Keefe, Connor Timmins has suffered a significant lower body injury. He's week to week per Keefe. What does that mean week to week? Like I can envision this being 2 months.
to me, my best guess would be a knee. You tear an MCL kind of thing, something that doesn't need surgery, but you're off of it. If he says significant lower body injury, it tells me
Yeah,
that
it's not good.
something tore, something broke. It's not a
Yeah.
good thing to hear. It's not ideal. And I think week to week kind of means take it a week at a time. How you feeling today? This is the part of the phase where you should be healing up. Now this is the part of phase where we're starting to get some mobility back. This is the week of the phase where we're doing some strengthening and whatnot. And it takes a long time to get over that stuff. If it's a knee or something like that, that's just a terrible way to start a season, man. I mean, I remember I tore my knee in the summer one time, and coming into
Yeah.
camp and coming into the season, you just hadn't been doing anything that you would normally do. You're behind the 8 ball and you're not in form. You don't get to hit that peak and hit the ground running when you get to the season. It's brutal to get hurt like that early in the season. And just from what they said right there, it tells me that it's probably something like a tear, a break of something. And that to me means, 6 weeks minimum.
Yeah, depth's being tested early on for sure. Simon Benoit might have to play a couple games early on. John Klingberg, by the way, upper body injury. We knew this, still said to be minor, but it's now been 5 days off the ice for him. So, again, it's too early to be one way or another have a feel on these situations. But I don't like the wording on Timmins. I really don't like the wording on Klingberg, but they're not really giving us much. We had a question in the chat. Any ex-Leaf guests coming up this season? Yes, we're going to try our best to have some great guests, just like last year. Going to bring it production-wise as well. We have we're happy to say Chris Pronger is coming on tomorrow. He's releasing a new whiskey, so we're going to promote that and get Prongs' thoughts on this Leafs team.
Yeah, man, we've had a solid run of guests, and I mean, we're not scared to repeat a couple when things are happening out there and certain people are in the know. We get them on and run through them. But yeah, some good Leafs alumni would be nice to get on, current and former players if we can. We'll run it through the ringer again and see what we can extract as much info out of these people as we can. But yeah, excited for Prongs tomorrow for sure. He's big fella, that's for sure. I remember him when I was playing in Philly. He was retired, not quite retired, but I think he was on the payroll, but he wasn't playing anymore. He had that injury. So we'd see him around once in a while, and he's pretty legendary dude. He had quite the career, and it'll be interesting to pick his brain tomorrow.
Hey, Rosie, we got an answer, by the way, on that PIM question from 1415. Can you take a wild guess?
I don't know, 215.
219. You probably won at Hockey TV right now.
219. That's all right. That's a good season.
Dude, I was laughing the other day. They mentioned a funny statistic about Sean Monahan's played like 11 seasons in the NHL. He's never had more than 25 PIMs in a season. What's your reaction to that, Jay Rosehill?
You could probably be playing a little bit harder. Like, you should be able to get 20 by accident out there if you're going hard and battling in the corner and trying to get the puck away from your opponents. But some guys just like to hang out in the soft spots and not really touch anybody. He's had a decent enough career, though. Who am I chirping?
This is great from Arthur Souza. Did you live in the Muse while at Fanshawe? Arthur, I did. The College Muse at Fanshawe. It's been a long time. You wouldn't know what that is, Rosie, but it's a legendary spot. They call it Funshaw College for a reason, but it's crazy how quickly time flies. So that's it for today's show. Last but not least, Matt Lill 2000, great show. Greetings from Finland. So we got a fan base across the planet at this point in time, Rosie. It's crazy.
I like
only
that.
1 year. But, pardon me?
I love that. Finland, beautiful, man. Hey, anyone can tune in. And I mean, that's the thing with the Leafs. They've got fans across the bloody world. You can go over to Europe and see people with Maple Leafs hats on. They just have that appeal and that range. And I guess this show does too. That's good to see.
Lots of range, lots of versatility, like our guy Noah Gregor, who we had on a couple weeks ago. So make sure you go back, check out our interviews from the offseason. We interviewed Matthew Nyes again, so twice now for him. Joseph Wall, Wayne Gretzky popped by. So who knows who's going to pop by on this show. But that's it. That's all for the opener here, Rosie. Great job today, buddy.
I like it. Knocking the rust off. Good to be back at her. We're looking forward to a good season, man. Nothing but good things ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you to everybody in the chat once again at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe on YouTube. Just search Leafs Morning Take wherever you get your podcasts as well. Will pop up. Many thanks to producer Aaron Bordato. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga, and we'll talk tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you for watching Leafs Morning Take. Hit the subscribe button to never miss a show. And for more, visit theleafsnation.com.